introduce Roger Stone. The man has only worked for 43 of the 45 presidents we're about to have. Do you guys know about Roger's tattoo? He's got a big tattoo of Nixon on his back. Again, I don't even know how to introduce the guy. He's written several books, all of them incredible. The Man Who Killed Kennedy, the Bush crime family, talking about Jeb. I mean, all of his books are just incredible. He is on Tuesday. He's doing a debate with this guy that I have his phone number if you want it. He's a little bit of an asshole. But he's doing a debate with Gerald Posner on Tuesday. So like I said, well, hold on, let me just make this clear. We gotta do this the right way. I gotta see what I'm doing here. Roger, where you at? Here he comes. Roger, come on up. And again, guys, if you want Gerald Posner's phone number, come see me.
Wow, what a great turnout. It's amazing for a Sunday morning. I can't wait to hear what I have to say. Are we in Dallas? I have not had a lot of sleep, in all honesty, since Election Day, so I ask you to bear with me, but it is great to be here with you. I got in very late last night. Southwest conveniently lost my bag, and therefore I would have had to show up in jeans and a t-shirt, and that wasn't going to happen. So we're going to film this for Facebook Live, but first I want your assistance in the setup for this video. So in a minute, I'm going to announce that I am debating Gerald Posner on Tuesday, the 53rd anniversary of John Kennedy's murder. And when I announce this, I want a lusty boo, so I can send the video to him. All right? So, ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to announce that on Tuesday, November 22nd, I am going to debate the question of who killed John F. Kennedy with the New York Times best-selling author, Gerald Posner. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, we may have had technical problems. We need to do that again at the end, but let's move along. So, it's very hard to follow some of the great speakers that you have had. I have told anybody that Barr McClellan really is the person who inspired me to write my book, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ. This is a book I took to 6 publishers, and all of them told me that it had no commercial appeal whatsoever. It couldn't possibly succeed. It, of course, became a New York Times bestseller, and on the 50th anniversary of John Kennedy's murder, the only assassination book that outsold it was Bill O'Reilly's book, Killing Kennedy, which you can find in the fiction section of their local Barnes & Noble. So take that, David Talbot. Anyway, I honestly believe that call them what you want, the New World Order, the military-industrial complex, the two-party duopoly, the establishment mainstream media combine, those who conducted a coup d'etat on November 22nd, 1963, finally lost control of our federal government 12 days ago. Now, I know that this is an inherently non-political gathering, and I would be the last one who would want to insert politics into a gathering like this. But let us have, just for my own edification, a division of the House. Will those who voted for the Trump-Pence ticket please raise their hands? With those who voted for the Clinton, what was that joker's name again? Who voted for Hillary Clinton, please raise their hands. Have these people beaten immediately. Just kidding. Hold on, we're getting there. We're getting there. For those who voted for my good friend, Governor Gary Johnson, with those, excellent, excellent, he's a good man. For those who voted for Dr. Jill Stein, a very brave and courageous woman, excellent. So, look, the important thing I don't need to tell you is that you participate. I have known the president-elect for 40 years, and I have worked on and off for him as a political consultant. I was the chairman of his 2000 Presidential Exploratory Committee. I was a consultant to his exploratory effort 4 years ago when I desperately wanted him to run against Mitt Romney. I am proud to say that I supported him and campaigned for him and gave many surrogate speeches for him in this most recent election. People have asked me if I was surprised, and I must tell you that I was not. Now, I am, at least I have been, a political consultant by trade, although I'd rather now write about politics and analyze it than do it. Sometimes you have no choice but to jump in the pool, however. I am not going to tell you that he is in any way perfect, and either would he. But here's what I do know. He is not beholden to any special interest. He is not owned by our intelligence services. He is not owned by the multinational corporations. He is not owned by the big banks. He is his own man. He has a view of history and a view of the situation in the country that is of his own education, of his own reading, of his own making. He is enormously courageous. He understood that he was taking his life in his hands every time he went out to campaign. We pray for his safety and the safety of his family because, ladies and gentlemen, his election is incredibly threatening to a group of very powerful people in institutions who have had their way in this country since 1963. The question of the documents, the 3,063 remaining documents that pertain to the Kennedy assassination that are scheduled to be released by 2017, unless the government finds some overriding reason why they should not be released. I am hopeful that President Trump will see the efficacy of full disclosure and transparency. Now, no one speaks for the president-elect, but I thought that the fact that he raised the question of Rafael Angel Cruz, I have no idea who pointed that out to him, someone, and that very effectively got under Ted Cruz's skin, shows that Donald Trump is far more knowledgeable about this section of American history than some may believe. A word about Ted Cruz, if I may, even though we're in his home state. If he's a conservative, I'm a vegetarian. This guy is a Bush family butt boy. He is the author of Bush versus Gore 2000, the lawsuit. He is the author of No Child Left Behind. He is the author of the Bush spending policies. He is the author of the Bush torture policies. He was George W. Bush's brain. His reinvention as a constitutional conservative is fairly recent. like when he decided to run for the U.S. Senate, before he decided not to run for Texas Attorney General. What kind of an outsider gets a secret $1 million loan from Goldman Sachs to run for the Senate and then doesn't report it as required on his campaign finance reforms? What kind of outsider gets a secret loan from Citibank for another $1 million and doesn't report it on his campaign finance reports as required by law? What kind of an outsider has a wife who's a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and who's written a terrific paper on why we should amalgamate our government with that of Mexico and Canada so we can all be one big happy family? I suspect that Mr. Cruz has political aspirations in the future, but I think the truth about him has to be revealed. He is a globalist, he is a Bush family retainer, and he is an exceedingly dangerous man. Now, why do people take an instantaneous dislike to Ted Cruz? I can tell you. They're just saving time. Now, Judith Baker and Wayne Madsen, two friends of mine, two people who have done extraordinary investigative and research work to tell the American people the truth about the Kennedy assassination, I think more than adequately covered the fact that Rafael Cruz was indeed in Lee Harvey Oswald's crew, that he was there, that there are many remaining questions about who he is, what he is, and who he worked for. And as Judith pointed out, you've never had a blanket denial from Senator Cruz, and he dropped out only days after this question was raised by Donald Trump. And if you've seen the video, the man has a virtual meltdown on television, a meltdown, where he ends up fighting with a 10-year-old boy on the street. So obviously this hit some kind of a raw nerve. Some of you may also have heard that during this terrific weekend that the author Joan Mellon spoke at the Lancer conference. She has claimed repeatedly that my book has no footnotes and no sources. I ask you to go back to look at my book in the back of the room. You will see that it has some 45 pages of footnotes and sources proving that Joan Mellon is a liar. And if she lies about that, she easily would lie about the question of Nathan Darby and the fingerprints that belong to the real killer of at least one of the shooters of John F. Kennedy, and that, of course, would be Malcolm Mac Wallace. Now, my friend Doug Caddy has debunked the mendacious Mellon's latest load of bullshit. So has Barr McClellan, so has Phil Nelson, so has Richard Bartholomew, so has Judith Baker. She's wrong. Perhaps this is why Ben Barnes, the longtime protege of LBJ, has told numerous people, and I have affidavits on this, that Mellon was being paid to write a book that would clean up Lyndon Johnson. Now, she does raise the question of the USS Liberty. This is an important question, but I frankly think that is to make Johnson's involvement in the Kennedy assassination less palatable, shall we say, or to try to discredit it. So I have reserved the right to sue Ms. Mellon. She lives in New Jersey, where fortunately I have many friends on the bench. And she has, as you know, hurt the sales of my book by saying things about my book that are false. Counselor, I think I have a cause of action there. This is the kind of disinformation that you see. I must tell you that one of my great concerns about the researcher community is that the only thing more dangerous than a lone nutter who insists that the Warren Commission report is correct are those in our own community who insist that only their view of what happened in the Kennedy assassination is accurate and that everybody else is wrong. I take a view that these are like pieces of a puzzle, that you have to step back and look at the entire picture from top to bottom. So, for example, those who say that John F. Kennedy was killed by a rogue group within the CIA, they're not wrong. Those who say that John Kennedy was killed by organized crime and the mob, they're not wrong. Right. Those who say that John Kennedy was killed by Big Texas Oil, they're not wrong. But who is the one man who has a unique relationship with each one of these institutions? Lyndon Johnson, as the Senate Majority Leader, takes the unusual step of appointing himself to the subcommittee of the Defense Appropriations Committee, where the Central Intelligence Agency's black box budgets are formulated and approved through the entire 50s. Let me put it another way. Lyndon Johnson is the paymaster for the CIA. The mob, Lyndon Johnson has a tight relationship with Carlos Marcello. He's taking bribes from Marcello to cover up the illegal gambling dens that are being run in Houston and Austin and Dallas and San Antonio. Those bribes being passed through a man named Jack Halfer, later pardoned for other minor crimes by President Lyndon Johnson. And of course, Johnson's role as the water boy, as the leg man for the Texas oil interests in Washington are widely known. So I argue that Johnson is the linchpin of a plot. See, we don't use the word conspiracy. A plot to kill John Kennedy. But he's the indispensable member of the plot. Who controls the Dallas Police Department? Who controls the Dallas District Attorney? And who immediately controls the FBI as soon as the deed is done? One man. Now, we know that Lyndon Johnson also tripled the FBI budget during the 50s, and he lives next door to J. Edgar Hoover. In fact, the Johnson girls refer to the FBI director as Uncle Edgar. Could these guys have been in it together? So it is important to recognize that none of us know everything, and that we're still piecing together extraneous but important pieces of information. I have huge respect for others who have gone long before me to try to uncover this puzzle, this enigma. I don't say that others are right or wrong. I try to fit new information into the mosaic that reveals what really happened here. The mainstream media has played an extraordinary role in the cover-up of the facts regarding John Kennedy's murder. And they have made it difficult through the 70s particularly, and into the 80s, to figure out what really happened. The good news now is that the mainstream media has lost their monopoly. There was a day when ABC, NBC, CBS, they were the only source of information. And therefore, if they didn't report something, it didn't happen. Now with the advent of cable and talk radio, and most importantly, the internet, the toothpaste can no longer be kept in the tube. If John Kennedy were murdered today on Dealey Plaza, you'd have several hundred cell phone videos of it, photos of it, instead of the one film by Mr. Zapruder, which even I got Arlen Specter to admit had been altered. So we are in a new information age where anything is possible. That's why the government is starting to talk about regulating the internet. That's why the UN, can you imagine this? The UN is now going to have control of the net. Something we as taxpayers paid for to develop, and was invented not by Al Gore, but with American ingenuity. And now you have, very disturbing, an effort to block what they call fake news. Fake news? Well, then block CNN, because that's as fake as it gets. CNN, that stands for the Clinton News Network. Barbara McClellan is absolutely right about the ongoing effort to try to burnish the image of Lyndon Baines Johnson. If any of you have not seen the extraordinarily excellent movie Selma, I highly recommend it to you. It is a historically accurate truth about the fact that it was not Lyndon Johnson who moved the Selma March. It was not Lyndon Johnson who wanted to do the 1965 Voting Rights Act. He was forced into it by Dr. King, who outwitted one of the smartest and wiliest politicians in the country. In fact, as he writes in his biography, Andrew Young said that LBJ called Dr. King that crazy nigger preacher who thinks he's running the country. That's how close they were. You see, Joe Califano tells us King and Johnson were on great terms. Really? Then why did you call him that? Why did you use the N-word to denigrate him? Word, by the way, Johnson used constantly when he was in front of the Southern senators so that he could prove that he was one of them. At the same time, he was writing the Southern Manifesto against civil rights, but declining to sign it because he wanted to be president in 1960. It is important that the scholarship continue. It's important that we continue to have free access to the internet, to talk to each other, to share new information, and frankly, to be wary of those who say they have all the answers. No one person has all the answers. And we are learning more about the Kennedy assassination as the years go by. I am one of those who fervently believes that if you sit back and you plot it out, you will see that the attempted assassination of Fidel Castro, the Bay of Pigs invasion, of which the federal government will still not release the remaining documents, the Kennedy assassination, Watergate and the removal of Richard Nixon, the pardon and the elevation of Gerald Ford, these are all interrelated events. In fact, you had my co-author and friend St. John's Hunt speak to you. How could it be that his father is there at the Bay of Pigs? He's involved in the attempted assassination of Castro. He is there on Dealey Plaza. He is there as one of the Watergate burglars. Coincidence? I think not. So, I am delighted to have the opportunity. For those of you who have asked me if I have any intention of joining the government, we all know that I'm entirely unconfirmable by the U.S. Senate, and therefore there is no chance of my joining an administration. I would, of course, do anything the President-elect asked me to do. I intend to stay outside the government to support the President's reform agenda. Now, the most dangerous thing that happens now, because I was in President Ronald Reagan's transition in 1980, and again in 1984, 80 being more important because you're completely reforming government. The real danger now are the establishment boarding parties, the neocons, the globalists. Anybody who comes to the fore and says, and I quote, "I was with you the whole time," those are the people you need to keep an eye out for. I think it is vitally important that the President-elect select men and women who support his vision of American nationalism. By that I mean people who believe in American power, and American exceptionalism, and American sovereignty. He is deeply committed to rebuilding this country. He knows how to get this economy cooking again with a strong, vibrant, growing economy. All of our other problems can be addressed. A growing economy is the key to making America great again. As a businessman who's created thousands of jobs, he understands that corporate tax reduction below the level of China and Canada will bring the companies back from abroad to expand here, to hire here, to create new jobs here. He knows that there's trillions sitting offshore that can be brought back into the country through inversion to be fairly taxed and put back into our economy. He is keenly aware of the fact that we have been out-negotiated on the diplomatic front, on the economic front. Who did we send to negotiate the Iranian deal? A social worker, someone whose background is in social work. Trump isn't even president yet, and the Prime Minister of Canada and the President of Mexico have already announced that they're willing to renegotiate NAFTA. Ford Motor Company announced they're not leaving Kentucky. They're going to expand there. God bless you, President-elect Donald Trump. He's not even sworn in yet, and he is making the kind of changes he has talked about. So I intend to continue with a syndicated radio show called The Stone Cold Truth, which airs from 1 to 3 Eastern Time on Saturdays on the Genesis Communications Network. We're going to be building up our affiliates. I'm going to be doing a 2-hour regular show on Wednesdays at Infowars.com to bring you updates on what's happening in Washington. We're going to focus on the transition. We see across the country demonstrations that are false flags, that are paid for by George Soros and others. This is agitprop. This is a paid astroturf. And frankly, I'm getting sick of it, and therefore I think there needs to be a counter demonstration in support of the new president on Inauguration Day in Washington. And I'm going to seek to organize that. I am also going to write a book, or I should say I'm writing a book because I've written the outline, which will be out on Inauguration Day, January 20th, entitled The Making of a President, How Donald Trump Orchestrated a Revolution and Proved the Mainstream Media Wrong. So, to get that written and to the publisher in time for the inauguration on January 20th is a Herculean task. I will have some help, but if you want to get the inside story on what happened in this election and how Donald Trump outsmarted the career politicians, outsmarted the smarty, smug mainstream media, outsmarted the globalists. By the way, folks, Hillary and her supporters spent somewhere around $1.5 billion in this election. Donald Trump and his supporters spent about $270 million. That's how one-sided this was, and it was really an extraordinary physical effort by Donald Trump in the last 2 weeks, coupled with a strategic decision to go into Wisconsin and Michigan, which tipped this election. So I urge you to look for my book, be out on Inauguration Day. I think you will enjoy it. Now, a final comment. Somebody pointed out earlier that I have a tattoo of Richard Nixon on my back. And it's true. It's about the size of a pineapple, right between my shoulder blades. Now, I don't hold, even in my book, Nixon's Secrets, in any way that Nixon was perfect. He made egregious errors. He also achieved some very great things. He brought us closer to peace. He, around his own national security apparatus, opened the door to the Chinese. He negotiated a strategic arms limitation agreement with the Soviets. He skillfully played them off against each other. He desegregated the public schools without violence. He saved the state of Israel in the 1973 war over the objections of Henry Kissinger, over the objections of the Joint Chiefs. He gave us federal revenue sharing so that our tax dollars would be spent at the lowest level of government possible. But then he also gave us the disastrous war on drugs, an ignominious, expensive failure. He also closed the gold window, another enormous mistake. So he was both very great and very flawed. The fact that I have his visage on my back is not a political statement in any way. What it is a reminder every day for me that in life, when things don't go your way, when you get knocked down, when you are discouraged, when you are defeated, when you're just about ready to give up, that's the time to get up, dust yourself off, and get back in the fight. That's the story of Richard Nixon. It's a story of perseverance. It's a story of survival. It's ultimately the story of success, and it is a uniquely American story. So that's the story on my tattoo, and I would say two other things. Liberals hate it. We actually need to do this one more time for our friends. Thank you very much. So if you would stop and say one. Oh, I'm sorry. We actually need to do this. So as I indicated earlier, I will be leaving the conference and I'm flying back to Miami, where on November 22nd, the 53rd anniversary of the murder of John F. Kennedy, I will be debating the question of who killed John Kennedy with the New York Times best-selling author, Gerald Posner. Thank you.
Roger, you're going to do us a great service there for this interesting man. The JFK, this says ASK Conference 2016 Hall of Shame Award for Gerald Posner.
I will be happy to pass this on. I will take a few questions, although it's always been hard to be questioned by a guy who knows far more than you do. Ed, go ahead.
There's no mic.
I'll bring it, Ed. I'll bring it.
I love the suit, Roger.
Thank you.
I got just 3 quick points.
Yes. Al Capone really misses suits, miss.
You realize he said 3 quick points.
I got
Okay, number one, you mentioned CNN. The founder of CNN, a man named Tom Johnson, was an aide to Lyndon Baines Johnson.
it. Yes.
Number two, my friend, mutual friend, St. John Hunt and I were together last night, and yesterday when he spoke, he talked about his father working for Richard Nixon, but he first worked for Lyndon Baines Johnson.
Yes.
That should be good. And St. said, I didn't know that. And number 3, you named a number of people, but you didn't name me. But I just thought we should mention Nigel Turner as the guilty man.
Nigel Turner should have been in my remarks, but Ed Catro he's the man. He is the man. When I need advice about how to handle Gerald Posner, Ed's the man I confer with. Yes, sir.
Quick two-part question. Being Trump isn't under control, do you consider it a failure if the truth about Kennedy doesn't come out? And if the truth doesn't come out, is that proof the political system is just a sham?
Well, it's a speculative question. I'm optimistic because for the first time we have a president who is not owned by anybody and who has no deep commitments or allegiance to our intelligence services or others in government who are the holders of the keys to this secret. If we fail, I will be deeply disappointed. That's all I can really tell you. Let's see what happens. Yes, sir.
Okay, so I have some concerns about some of the people I think that Trump might want to elect into his cabinet. People like the former U.S. ambassador to the UN, John Bolton, who is also a member of the Project for a New American Century,
Yes.
neocon.
Yes.
I also have concerns about people such as, he was looking at Jamie Dimon, a J.P. Morgan banker,
Yes.
and all these other people. So if Donald Trump, and he's also said he has a tremendous respect for people like Henry Kissinger, that he wants to look at people like Richard Haas, the president of the Council on Foreign Relations, for foreign policy advice. So my question would be, if Donald Trump puts people in his cabinet who are globalists, who are part of the banking elite, who are neoconservatives, will you renounce your support for Donald Trump?
Let's take those one by one. It appears to me that Jamie Dimon floated his own egg. No one I know at the transition, nobody I know at Trump Tower knows where that came from. There's no evidence that he was ever really under consideration to be Secretary of the Treasury. Richard Haas of the Council on Foreign Relations has, I believe, been rejected. He approached Donald Trump early in the campaign. They didn't share the same worldview. Nothing happened. I have already said that I would not have chosen Reince Priebus as my chief of staff, but I'm willing to give the president-elect the benefit of the doubt on a staff job that is largely mechanical. When he says that he has great respect for Henry Kissinger, maybe that's a little politics rubbing off on him. He was trying to win an election. Let's see what they do. So far, the globalists are not very happy with his appointments. Now, John Bolton is a friend of mine. John Bolton's a great guy to drink whiskey and play poker with. He's just wrong about everything. And he's particularly wrong, particularly bellicose, on the question of our relationship with the Russians. You have a new thing going on in the country, where if you're not for thermonuclear war with the Russians over Syria, well then you must be a Russian agent. Congressman Jerry Nadler and Congressman Elijah Cummings both called on the FBI director to open an investigation into me to look at my ties to the Russians. Folks, let me be very clear. I have no ties to the Russians. Other than my weakness for Russian vodka, I have never been to Russia. I have no clients from Russia. I have no middlemen who represent the Russians who are clients of mine. I have no Russian influences. This is a canard. The idea that Donald Trump and his top advisors were being abetted or somehow paid by the Russians. This is the new McCarthyism. This is accusing us of treason because we don't want war. War serves no one. It is the Clinton-Obama policies that have brought us to the brink of war with the Russians. And if you want to talk about who has done well-paid favors for the clique around Putin, why that would be Hillary and Bill Clinton and their phony charity, the Clinton Foundation, which is not a charity, but a slush fund for grifters. a vehicle for the facilitation of multi-million-dollar bribes. So, it is, let's wait and see what we get. If this administration embraces globalist policies, if it becomes politics as usual, and as if the president does not bring the changes that he pledges, of course I will no longer support them. But knowing Trump for 40 years and knowing how tough he is, I'm very optimistic.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm betting that Bill Posner won't show up. But as to these paid demonstrations, this is the new purple revolution. Hillary and Bill wore purple on the day after, and George Soros is at the head of it. It's his money. And I have great concerns about the day of the inauguration because color revolutions have snipers that shoot people on both sides. And my bet or my worry is that is what's going to happen on Inauguration Day.
Well, I know a little bit about the president-elect's security, his personal security. Having read Vince Palmyra's book and having written extensively in my book on the Bush crime family, which will be out next year in paperback with an entire new section on George P. Bush, the next criminal to come through the Bush family, and they're probably their next candidate for president. I've written extensively about the attempted assassination of President Reagan. And I find many of the same anomalies and discrepancies that you saw in the Kennedy assassination on that day in the attempted assassination of President Reagan. So the fact that President-elect Trump has Secret Service protection does not by itself give me solace. Now, I do not mean to impugn the integrity of individual Secret Service agents who I think are brave and honest and patriotic men and women, but I also understand politics. So, and I've been asked not to speak at all about the president's-elect's personal security arrangements, other than to say, I pray for him every night, and I urge all of you to pray for his safety and the safety of his family and the safety of the Vice President-elect and his family. Thank you.
I have to make my comments very brief because Dr. Warwick just posed the same question.
Okay, thank you. Well, welcome, Mr. Stone. I enjoyed your book. I've seen your discussions about President Reagan's assassination attempt on YouTube. Dr. Warwick already, I hate to use some of my thunder because I don't think it's my thunder. I think there's a lot of people that have the same concern. I'm a lifelong student of the JFK assassination, and when you watch the Zapruder film as much as most of us have, especially in slow motion, and you watch the enormous amount of seconds that JFK's driver had his head totally rotated back, looking at the president's head, second after second after second, until his head blew up. I was going to ask you, have you already, or are you intending to encourage the president-elect to bring his own Secret Service agents to town?
You're right, I did address that in the last question. It is, so I think I've said as much about it as I want to. For those of you who don't know, the gentleman at the microphone is the co-author of the Clinton's War on Women, Robert Morrow, researcher. That is a book that I think we would both highly commend to you. Robert, go ahead.
Just trying to fix the mic.
All right.
Or I can ask a question about.
Go ahead. Everyone can hear you.
It's okay. Testing 1, 2, 3. Hey, Roger, I just want to thank you, Phil Nelson and Warren McClellan for doing so much to expose the awful truth of Lyndon Johnson. And I really think you guys are changing history. You've told the truth about LBJ. You described him as a functional lunatic, someone with a manic personality, a narcissistic egomaniac,
Pill popper in there.
pill popper of Blanco County, pathological liar, alcoholic,
Sadist.
business crook, serial adulterer, and an unhinged sex fiend who just couldn't keep his hands off women. The question I have for you is, you've known Donald Trump for 36 years. Do you see a lot of similarities in the personality of Donald Trump and Lyndon Johnson? Thank you.
I see none. First of all, as you probably know, Donald Trump is a teetotaler. He neither drinks, he won't even take an aspirin. He's a very clean liver. I've never seen him lose his temper. He seems to be, except for perhaps for effect in the negotiation, I don't find any similar qualities at all. Now, I do see certain qualities in common between Lyndon Johnson and Hillary Clinton. I do think they're both psychopaths. I do think they're both mentally unbalanced. I do think they're both epically greedy. I think they're both foul-mouthed. I think they're both short-tempered. And I think both of them would steal a hot stove. All right, thank you very much. One more.
So, I've enjoyed your books and a lot of what you say, but I have a concern. I know you say that politics is not a beanbag sport, but also you advocate kind of the methods that were used in the McCarthy era. Totally character-defaming socialist calling and things like that, that kind of political tactics that are, in my mind, unethical. And you kind of, I guess out of necessity, go for those. That's my concern.
Well, I thought I just denounced those very policies a few minutes ago. The idea that if you're opposed to the Clintons and you're not for a nuclear war with the Russians, you must be working for, you must be a Russian agent. You must be a traitor to your country. I have definitely been inside the corroded rectum of the two-party system for 4 years. And I have seen up close how American politics works. And I make no bones about the fact that when I was a heavy-duty lobbyist, I saw firsthand the fact that everything in Washington can be purchased for the right amount of money, with the right lawyers, with the right lobbyists. That we have a system that I have been part of that is infected with special interest influence, that the two parties, and I say this with some regret because I have a sentimental attachment to the Republican Party of Barry Goldwater, a party of small government, a party of limited spending, a party of civil liberties, a party of peace through strength rather than going around the globe looking for trouble, looking for endless foreign wars to embroil ourselves in. That Republican Party, sadly, almost doesn't exist anymore. The Republican Party of Mitt Romney is the party of K Street and Wall Street, and it's identical to the Democratic Party. We have one party dominated by neocons, except that all ended 12 days ago. And every Republican president, Lincoln, McKinley, Roosevelt, Eisenhower, Nixon, Reagan, has remade the party in their own image. Now is an opportunity to go from being the K Street, Wall Street party back to being the party of Main Street, back to being the party of working people back to being the party of the people who pay their taxes, who go to work, who go to church, who serve in civic capacities, who give to charity. They don't demonstrate. They're not the shouters. They're not the screamers. They're the forgotten Americans. That is the party that I would like to see us be again. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, how much better does that get, right? Holy smokes. We called in a second urologist if needed. Guys, we're going to break for lunch. We asked everybody to be back